From wherever you're watching us from, good evening and welcome to Channel 1 News Hour on this 12th day of October 2020. A very instrumental day, I should say, and especially for our learners. It's a day that was full of activities, and especially in the education sector. 7 months down the line with no learning, but the phased reopening has started for grade 4, class 8, and also our form 4 candidates. My name is Njue. Kindly let us all be together in this bulletin. Of course, we have business and sports, not forgetting politics. But all this and much, much more, let's do this after the highlights. It is back to school as learners in grade 4, class 8 and form 4 report to classes under COVID-19 containment guidelines. Stop selective application of the law. The Deputy President warns police against being used for political gains. And seeking a harmonious working engagement. Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i says there should be no bad blood between Parliament and the Cabinet. Remember, we are live from the broadcasting house here in the county of Nairobi, plus our social media platform, that is YouTube, that is Facebook, and on Twitter at Njue, at KBC Channel 1. We begin with education matters, where Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha has warned that no learner will be turned away for lacking school fees. Professor Magoha, who witnessed the resumption of classes at Olympic Primary School, said the directive applies both to private schools and that pregnant learners must be allowed to continue their classes uninterrupted. Learners in grade 4, class 8 and form 4 resumed classes Monday under the phased reopening of schools.
Monday morning. It was a new beginning for students in grade 4, class 8 and form 4 as they reported back to school after almost 7 months of disruption of the school calendar due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Pupils will return back to their classes, but now under new environment. Students required to put on face masks, their temperatures checked before they enter their school compounds, and wash their hands. Speaking Monday when he coordinated the monitoring of reopening of schools in Nairobi County at Olympic Primary School, where he witnessed the distribution of free masks to the students by well-wishers, Magoha directed both private and public schools not to send home learners for lack of school fees.
Primary school is free, so there's nothing like fees. Day secondary schools are free. But for the boarding schools, where boarding charges are charged, may I once again plead with our principals and head teachers to ensure that no child is sent home on account of school fees, both in the private and the public sector.
He said learning will commence from where pupils stopped and that online classes will not be regarded as part of the syllabus coverage.
All children will start from where they left, and like I've said, the gold standard are these two. So even if you make so much noise, if you send a child home because the child did not engage in online classes, that is criminal, and we shall come for you. The fact that it's a private school does not protect you.
Magoha warning perpetrators of teenage pregnancies of legal action, urging girls who could have fallen victim not to shy away from schools.
As we deal with the criminals, may I assure them that they have nothing to fear. They should come back to school. Teachers should be very, very empathic with them, giving them all the assistance. And when the time comes, they should be given the opportunity to go and give birth. And after winning, they shall come back and continue with learning.
The CS said schools must ensure protocols outlined by the Ministry of Health are followed, and that institutions keep inventory of learners with pre-existing conditions so that the necessary attention can be given to them. Suleiman Yeri, Channel 1 News.
And still on education, schools across the country reopened on Monday under tough measures, including social distancing in class, wearing face masks, and having hand-washing water points at designated areas. Learners in Grade 4, Standard 8, and Form 4 are expected to be in school for 11 weeks until December the 23rd, with candidates set to begin their national examinations early next year. Purity Museo with that report.
At Jamhuri Secondary School, hand-washing points in place and students having to wash their hands for at least 20 seconds before accessing the classes. The school's administration is leaving nothing to chance in protecting the candidates from contracting or spreading the deadly COVID-19 disease.
As the boys came in, the first thing we were checking was the temperature. So far, we have not seen anybody beyond the temperature that is required. We have the thermogans at the gate. After that, they were being sanitized before registering themselves through the biometric system. And once they were inside the school, they were being frisked to ensure that everything that they have carried is what is required.
In the new arrangement, a class of about 180 candidates will now occupy 11 classes, more than double during normal times.
We have to make sure that the classes are between 15 and 17. If another class comes, we can accommodate comfortably, but if 2 other classes or 3 come, it will definitely going to be a big task on us, okay, to ensure that the social distancing takes place.
Similar scenes replicate in State House Primary School as Class 8 candidates appeared excited that they will finally clear their primary education after disruption of their studies by the coronavirus pandemic in March this year.
At first, because it was so urgent, I started gathering my books together. I started trying to remember things I should and trying to bring myself back to the idea that we are going back to school so suddenly.
We started well off. It's a nice start because in every corner you can move and you see a water point, so you get encouraged that we are safe in school.
As teachers across the country continue to receive learners in Grade 4, Class 8 pupils and Form 4 candidates, concerns are being raised on what will become of learners with special needs who cannot put on a mask or even observe the social distancing in case the Ministry of Education decides to have all learners resume classes. At City Primary School, which houses learners with autism, teachers are worried on what will become of their students in case the Ministry of Education decides to have all learners return to school in the first physical learning reopening of institutions.
Autistic children are hyperactive, so controlling them will need more manpower. So when they arrest, we are able to manage them. They cannot stay with the mask, they don't communicate, they have hyperactive behavior.
Meanwhile, Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, KUPPET, has lauded the move by the government to reopen schools, saying teachers were even ready for a second phased reopening.
The most appropriate date for reopening should count from today up to the 14th day. Then the 15th day we can accept back, can take back to school the rest of the schools and the students.
But for parents, it was not all joy, as some are still skeptical on the safety of their children in schools.
I wasn't prepared. Of course, there's school fees, there's shopping, and being that it is at the middle of the month, we were not even financially prepared.
Purity Museo, Channel 1 News, Nairobi County.
Now our focus on some concerns raised by some parents, and a section of parents and learners in Mombasa County are expressing reservations about the effectiveness of COVID-19 containment guidelines, saying they will not be sufficient to stop an outbreak of the novel coronavirus in schools. They are concerned mingling of students who hail from different parts of the country where COVID-19 prevalence rates may be higher than at the coast could lead to a wave of new infections, and in particular in boarding schools. Njue with that report.
Mandatory face masks, sanitation booths, social distancing requirement, as well as other containment measures were adhered to as schools opened their doors to Grade 4, Standard 8 and Form 4 learners across Mombasa County. At the South the Sea Primary, pupils from grade 4 and class 8 were spread out in 18 classes as teachers remained hawk-eyed to ensure adherence to the COVID-19 prevention protocols.
We are ready to continue talking to our children, especially to be used to stay with the mask. You know, it's not comfortable for the children.
It is a state of affairs replicated in most public schools across the county. For schools with boarding facilities such as the Mama Ngina Girls High School, dorms have 3 decas out of the usual 6.
We are ready. The girls have started reporting. And I believe we are going to adhere to the safety and health protocols.
School heads assuring parents and guardians that all measures are in place to facilitate smooth resumption of learning.
Parents don't need to worry. The government has provided, we handed enough textbooks before we closed, and I'm sure they are going to continue adding to the deficit of the textbooks. We have enough teachers.
All I'm asking for is for my girls to come to school. The rest will follow. I believe they will feed. And I believe finally the parents will pay the fees.
Meanwhile, boarding schools at the coast, just like many across the country, have students from all corners of the Republic, a fact that is causing anxiety among many stakeholders. Many expressed fears of an outbreak of coronavirus in schools.
Pengine hata kama huku kwetu Mombasa ama Pwani, pengine kuna ile maambukizi makubwa ya COVID-19. Lakini pia kule nje, je, wakiwa nasafiri wanaenda zao shuleni, kwa mfano Mazara High School, wanaenda sio wapi? Vipi huko kuhusiana huko kama nasafiri wanakuja huku, je vipi?
We are from different background. Some of us were affected by these diseases. Okay, maybe not them but their parents. That is my worry most, and our parents are also worried about our safety back at school.
Kama hizi masks tunajua tunavaa kwa madarasani, lakini tukiwa kwenye dormitories obviously tutakuwa tuwaziacha, tutakuwa tunazivua. Kwa hivyo nilikuwa naomba walimu ili walizingatie kwa undani.
Standard 8 and Form 4 candidates are also skeptical of the 6-month learning window before the national examinations.
Watategemea na syllabus wale walimu ambao watatupeleka, kwa sababu tunaweza sema tutamaliza, kumbe walimu wenyewe pia wana changamoto zao. Kwa hiyo mimi I hope so.
Despite their underlying fears, 70% of students from public primary and secondary schools did indeed report back to school. Juni Karisa Mbele from Mombasa County for Channel 1 News Hour.
At about 10 minutes past the hour, we are taking our first breath, but when we come back, more still on the phased reopening. But before I do that, Dominic Maranga says, true, let our kids learn. David Gunjiri tuned in to my best channel. Thank you so much. Walter Onchiri Mukamba says, tuned in from Miruka Nyamira. Magoa is not serious. Where does he think private schools will get money from, if not from parents? A valid question. Watching from Cape Kellion, Tor Ezekiel. We have Major Stephen Odera watching from Mumias. I'll be sampling more of your comments and especially more on the phased reopening when we come back. Let's have that break now.
In the last 20 years, we have grown to ensure that we are able to get down to the people and bring the services closer to the people.
When we migrated, today we have almost 90, if not more, 90 TV stations in all languages.
New, better, more modern jobs were created in the tens of thousands.
Mimi kama mwana bodaboda, network imenisaidia sana kwa sababu unaweza ongea na mkulima, kuitie kazi, uje uchukue kazi huko.
I mean, it changed people's lives dramatically when they could communicate easily, inexpensively.
Kwa sasa hivi unaweza ukapiga simu popote penye huko. Hata sasa hivi niko hapa nimeitwa kazi kwa sababu ya simu.
New careers have been developed.
And we have seen an improvement in the quality of service that is offered.
You get to know so many people in very short time. You get to sell your business in a very short time. So my cell phone really helps me. I can't do without it.
Many businesses are going online, services are going online. Having a very strong but open, transparent regulator was very, very key in getting us where we are now.
On the next episode of Corner.
Let's go out and do something just for you.
Kurusa ananitreat like a distant acquaintance, like a child who's afraid of being caught out. But she'd better get back to her senses before I'm worn.
To tell your brother, the next time he sets foot in this club, I will have him arrested for trespassing.
Isn't it my wedding? Shouldn't I get what I want?
He took out some money with loan shark. Now I can't pay it back.
Next on.
Please help me! Help me, I beg you, please! He's trying to kill me! Help me!
Can't believe that you've become so cold, Fabiola.
This is the way I am.
Really?
Ever since you ruined my life, this is who I am. It's strange that she screamed at Francisco, given that he's the only one she's always been at ease with.
Oh, I'm very worried, dear friend.
But sometimes I feel like that you don't love me as much as I love you.
Why would you say that to me?
All of the women seem to have gone across the street. But why is that happening? Because they all really like Ramon.
In love with Ramon.
And in case you just joined us, this is Channel 1 News Hour. We are glad you're watching. And still on education, Form 4 students, Class 8 and Grade 4 pupils started streaming back into class in Kisumu as classes resumed after 7 months break. Some private schools, however, were still putting in place safety measures outlined under the reopening guidelines. Achola Simon with the details.
This was the reality in most learning institutions as the first reopening of schools kicked off in Kisumu County. Most of the schools have met the requisite measures put in place by the Ministry of Health and are ready to welcome back learners in Form 4, Standard 8 and Grade 4. For private schools, it is a sigh of relief after being out of business for over 7 months.
The last 7 months have been painful for us because our teachers have been without employment and without a salary. So when we resume, I think they'll be very, very keen and very enthusiastic to do good work. And we believe they have not lost that spirit of hard work which we had from January, February and March.
The management of Mbale Shalom Academy was putting in place last-minute efforts to ensure classes resume by Tuesday afternoon. The administration said the measures put in place are enough to cater for the entire school reopening.
Now is enough, will be enough from ECD up to Form 4. And we believe that any time the government will allow the other students to come in, we shall be ready to receive them.
The Education CS had warned that the adherence to set health protocols may prove difficult, but was the only way to defeat the virus. Achola Simon reporting for Channel 1 News from Kisumu County.
Meanwhile, it was the same script, different cast on Monday as the first batch of learners reported to their respective institutions for the phased reopening of schools. And as Irene Chumaudim reports, it's a new normal for schools, more so for those in the rural area where classrooms have to accommodate half the normal population.
Monday 12th, 2020 was an interesting day in the national school calendar as the first batch of learners reported to their respective institutions in conformity to the Ministry of Education directive. At Kamsinga Boys School, Bungoma County, a classroom that has a capacity to seat 50 students will now host half the capacity in adherence to COVID-19 prevention measures.
Hata kama challenges hizo zimekuwepo, lakini tunajua kwamba tutafaulu.
We'll be able to prepare our students well to post very good results. Pay school fees. However, those that will not be able in the meantime, we shall give them time to prepare themselves, but let them also appreciate that their school need finances.
In Mandera, over 70% of students' population in the county turned up for day one of the first reopening. Mandera Secondary School Principal Noor Abdi lauded the government for facilitating resumption of learning after a 7-month break.
In a class of 60 students now, we have only put 20 in the class.
At Lenana Primary School, wearing of face masks, sanitizing of hands and social distance was observed within the institution's compound. In Kilifi County, learners filled storage containers with water for hand washing even as the region grapples with water scarcity. Maintaining social distancing is still a challenge as evident at Narok's Harmony School, where only 17 students reported.
Low turn up, according to us. We think the parents were just checking on the first day. Always they want to know what happens the first day.
A spot check in Migori County revealed the number of learners was more than teaching and subordinate staff in many of the schools visited. Irene Mchuma Odim, Channel 1.
Away from education matters, Deputy President William Ruto has asked the police not to be selective in the enforcement of the law. Ruto says it is the responsibility of the police to serve all Kenyans equally, irrespective of ethnic, political, or social status in the society. The Deputy President said it was unfortunate that the police were disrupting some meetings while allowing others to go on uninterrupted.
Bariki! Inua! Kwa jina lako tukufu.
Speaking at his home in Sugoi, the Deputy President said the 2010 Constitution has empowered the police to be independent while discharging their duties, adding that it was wrong for the law enforcement officers to apply the law selectively.
Na sisi wote ni sawa chini ya katiba ya Kenya. Let us not turn Kenya into the animal farm, where there are some that are more equal than others. The law must apply equally across Kenya, irrespective of who is leaning towards which or what direction.
The DP said it is unfortunate that the police cordoned off the venues of Kakamega church functions last weekend while allowing others to go on uninterrupted.
Kama tunaweza kuongea mambo ya Prime Minister na Deputy Prime Minister na tukuongea mambo ya bodaboda, iko makosa gani? Kwa sababu Prime Minister ni watu wakubwa na tumekuwa tukiongea hiyo maneno siku mingi. Mbona tusibadilishe safari hii, viongozi wangoje kidogo, tuongee mambo ya mwananchi mdogo, huyu wa bodaboda, huyu wa matatu, ule makanga, ule wa mama mboga, mambo yao tuyatatue. Kwa sababu tukitatua matatizo ya wananchi hawa wadogo, mamilioni, wale wakubwa na wadosi wanaweza kujipanga kwa sababu wako na uwezo.
Political allies of Deputy President have in the recent weeks accused the police of harassing them for what they termed as their unwavering support for William Ruto.
Our prayer is that people do not use hatred to achieve what they need, what they like. We appeal to Kenyans that every member of our society or community should take into account the needs and aspirations of human family as a whole. This is the kingpin of peaceful coexistence.
Tutatembea pamoja vipi kama hatujaketi vile tumeketi? Tupatane, tuelewane, tukubaliane, ndio tutembee safari moja ya kuunganisha Wakenya, ya kujenga taifa letu pamoja. This is why we must continue the conversation, we must continue engagement, we must continue to build these bridges of friendship so that we can have a cohesive, united nation.
Timothy Kipnusu for Channel 1 News.
The Executive and the Senate have formed a joint technical team to fast-track passing of crucial bills and address other legislative issues in the August House. The committee, which will be led by the Clerk of the Senate and the Secretary to the Presidential Delivery Unit, was formed after a consultative meeting between the National Development, Implementation and Communication Cabinet Committee and the Senate Liaison Committee on Monday.
The working relationship between the executive and the legislature is set to improve following the formation of a joint technical committee. Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i says the committee will work on fast-tracking government businesses in the Senate.
We have just formed a joint technical team that will be led by the Clerk of the Senate and the Secretary to the President's Delivery Unit. and the sector implementation in the office of the President, who will now put together the business that is before the House to ensure that we don't lose any time in the legislation that we have sent to the House.
Speaker of the Senate, Kenneth Lusaka, acknowledged the need for both entities to work together despite being independent.
We realize we are all working for the same people. We are working for Kenyans, and therefore there is that need for us to work together despite our independence. You know, there's a normally separation of power between the executive and the legislature, but we must at some point meet and work together, that interface.
The Monday consultative meeting is the first of several forums between the two arms of government meant to explore best mechanisms of implementing national development projects.
The country has recorded 11 deaths from the coronavirus in the last 24 hours, the highest number in the last few days, bringing the tally for fatalities to 777. In the Monday data released by the Ministry of Health, the country recorded 73 new cases in a similar period, with Nairobi County leading with 34 cases, while Kilifi is second with 18 cases.
The Ministry of Health has announced 73 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours after 2,001 samples were tested. The country's caseload is now at 41,619. On a sad note, 11 patients have succumbed to the virus, bringing the tally for fatalities to 777. In a statement, the Health Ministry stated that in the new cases, 46 are males and 27 females. From the new confirmed cases, 70 are Kenyans, while 3 are foreigners. Age-wise, the youngest is 17 years old, while the oldest is 77 years old. 97 more patients are fully recovered from the virus, and the total recoveries now stand at 31,097. Out of this, 31 were discharged from the home-based care program, while 66 were from various health facilities. Nairobi registered the highest number of 34, Kilifi 18, Mombasa 11, Busia 4, Taita Taveta 2, Kirinyaga, Kiambu, Meru and Uasin Gishu counties have 1 case each. Timothy Kipnusu for Channel 1 News.
And the Law Society of Kenya has declared the current National Assembly and the Senate as illegitimate and claims all bills passed by Parliament are illegal. The society, which marched to Parliament buildings on Monday afternoon, claimed the President has no option but dissolve Parliament as advised by the Chief Justice, as failure to implement the 2/3 gender rule amounts to a travesty to democracy. Monday afternoon, and the area around Parliament was under tight security as LSK, together with other interested parties, marched to petition legislators to cease operations. Led by Nelson Harvey, the lawyers' body claiming 14 days had lapsed since the President was handed the advisory by Chief Justice David Maraga to dissolve Parliament.
We have told the clerk of the National Assembly that effective today, Parliament is illegitimate. Any person who until today was an elected member of the National Assembly or the Senate has ceased being an elected member. He or she is a trespasser.
LSK claims the houses had failed the people of Kenya, citing failure to pass the 2/3 gender rule, failure to oversight executive, corruption and nepotism.
The majority view of the people of Kenya is that Parliament has failed in its obligations. There is rampant corruption. There is nepotism. There is cronyism. There is no development. And we are not limiting our struggle to the 2/3 gender rule. There are many other reasons as to why Parliament must go home. It has failed to oversight the executive. It has failed to hold the President accountable.
He said the decision by government to file a petition in court halting the advisory was a delaying tactic, alleging that the government had failed to honor other court orders and should not be entertained.
Parliament and the Attorney General are buying time through the court process, or they have ensured that the court process will deliver an outcome favorable to them.
LSK vowing to continue lobbying for the exit of the legislators to ensure the Constitution is followed to the letter.
But more importantly, Kenyans must understand the decision by the Chief Justice is one that cannot be challenged in a court of law. Just as none of us can take the President of the Republic of Kenya to court because of a decision he has made.
Earlier in the day, the Law Society of Kenya filed a petition challenging the new security measures issued by the National Security Advisory Council and approached by the cabinet to regulate public gatherings. The society is seeking to include orders restraining the Inspector General of Police acting by himself or his agents under his command from seeking to license or holding of public gatherings, meetings and processions, banning, disrupting or interfering with peaceful public gatherings, meetings and procession of LSK. It claims enforcement and implementation of the directive will violate the rights and freedoms of LSK and its members. Moving on, Machakos County Governor Alfred Mutua has faulted the recent ruling by the High Court that governors eyeing the presidency will have to resign from their current position 6 months before the election date. Mutua, who has expressed interest in the presidency, has termed the ruling by Justice Weldon Korir as discriminatory, unfair and unconstitutional.
Governor Alfred Mutua says the ruling by Justice Weldon Korir must be contested, arguing that it infringes on the constitutional rights of all county bosses seeking the presidency. In the ruling, governors who will declare their interest in the presidency will be ineligible and will not be cleared by the Electoral Commission unless they relinquish their gubernatorial seats 6 months prior to the polls.
Therefore, this recent ruling saying that governors like myself who want to bring mambo fresh in our country and change lives in our country cannot vie unless they resign 6 months to the elections can only be viewed as discriminatory, unfair and unconstitutional.
Elsewhere, breast cancer patients in the country are calling on the government to offer free screening for early detection. The appeal comes as the world celebrates Palliative Care Week, with October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Both the local government, that is the county governments, and the national government, to take into account the many problems that women are going through, especially issues to do with breast cancer and other forms of cancer.
In Nakuru County, the government has promised to resolve a 40-year-old land dispute between two groups in Dambini, Naivasha within 2 months. This emerged during a meeting convened by government officials led by Naivasha Sub-County Commissioner, where it was agreed that the two groups provide ownership documents of the 300-acre land in 2 weeks before a final decision is made.
Tutaenda through, we will clarify, because government must always be sure. Serikali must be sure. Na decision yetu ile tutawaletea hapa, hata kama ni baada ya mwezi moja.
Finally, a somber mood has engulfed Mudolo Central in Kakamega County following the death of a 90-year-old widow in the area. Witnesses say angry residents descended on the suspect, who is said to have committed the heinous act upon his release from a nearby police station.
Further afield, President Donald Trump nominee for the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett, is appearing before senators in what has been billed as the contentious week of confirmation hearings. The 48-year-old conservative jurist has vowed to judge legal cases impartially. Coney's nomination, which comes so close to the November 3rd presidential election, has sparked a political row between the Republicans and rival Democrats.
Judge Amy Coney Barrett's approval would cement a 6-3 conservative majority on the 9-member top court, shifting its ideological balance for potentially decades to come. President Trump picked Judge Barrett to replace Liberal Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who died last month, aged 87. The Republicans, who currently hold a slim majority in the U.S. Senate, the body that confirms Supreme Court judges, are trying to complete the process before Trump takes on Democratic rival Joe Biden in the election. Meanwhile, campaigners in Nigeria have responded with skepticism to the announcement that a police unit widely accused of brutality has been disbanded. Demonstrators had called for the Special Anti-Robbery Squad SARS to be broken up. The demonstrators, however, said they are unhappy that its officers are being redeployed to other units rather than being disciplined.
Let's now make sense of shillings and cents, and Kenya inched closer to breaching its debt ceiling of 9 trillion shillings as the country's debt portfolio peaked to 7.1 trillion shillings by the end of August this year. Data from the Central Bank of Kenya indicates that Treasury borrowed 224 billion shillings through government papers from the domestic market, which is 60% of the total loan issued in the first quarter of 2020-2021 financial year. Domestic debts from insurance firms, banks, pension funds, and overdraft from CBK in financial year 2020-2021 stood at 3.4 trillion by the end of August. The government has been borrowing to plug a widening funding gap occasioned by poor business activity due to the COVID-19 pandemic. During the budget speech before Parliament, National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani said the government plans to borrow close to 1 trillion shillings in the financial year ending June 2021. And the World Bank has barred Kenyan-based technology firm TECHNO-BRAIN from participating in its project for 28 months. According to a dispatch from the bank, the company, together with its sister company TECHNO-BRAIN UAE, have been sanctioned in connection with collusive and fraudulent practices as part of the Integrated Public Financial Management Reform Project 2 in Liberia. The debarments makes TECHNO-BRAIN Kenya and TECHNO-BRAIN UAE ineligible to participate in projects and operations financed by institutions of the World Bank Group. It is part of a settlement agreement under which the companies acknowledge culpability and responsibility for the underlying sanctionable practices and agree to meet specified corporate compliance conditions as a condition for release from debarment. TECHNO-BRAIN has told Channel One Business that officers involved in the fraud have since been fired, and it is in talks with the bank to seek remedial measures. The project, since renamed as the Public Financial Management Reforms for Institutional Strengthening Project, was designed to improve domestic revenue mobilization system and strengthening financial control and accountability in public finances. Elsewhere, the Capital Markets Authority licensed Pezesha Africa has been licensed as Kenya's first crowdfunding platform by the Capital Markets Authority. The debt-based crowdfunding platform has been on a one-year testing period in the regulatory sandbox operated by CMA will allow firms and entrepreneurs to raise and collect funds from investors, contributors, and donors.
Kenyan fintech startup Pezesha Quest to become the first Africa-focused digital financial marketplace has inched a step close after the Capital Markets Authority granted a no-objection letter to the startup to operate its debt-based crowdfunding platform in the Kenyan capital markets. According to the regulator, fintech has successfully completed a one-year testing period in the regulatory sandbox, which was launched last year by the authority. The no-objection has been issued subject to Pezesha maintenance of existing compliance requirements, including an appropriate financial risk management framework, adequate local capital market transaction control procedure, and efficient, orderly, and fair operations of the business segment, product, or intermediaries. This is a subject to the finalization of a comprehensive regulatory framework to operate a debt-based crowdfunding platform in Kenya in the medium term. The CMA Acting Chief Executive Wycliffe Shamia said, "We are glad to note that Pezesha effectively tested its crowdfunding innovation and achieved its testing objectives and control boundaries between July 2019 and July 2020. The positive outcome is a clear demonstration of the unique opportunities arising from the sandbox environment and potential for scaling up innovative ideas. The success of Pezesha testing phase underlines the authority recognition of the need to nurture innovations that can transform the fundraising model in the capital markets," said the Capital Markets Authority.
British Airways has announced it is replacing its chief executive Alex Cruz as the airline navigates the worst crisis facing its industry. Crews who has been with British Airways since the year 2016 will be immediately replaced by Aer Lingus boss Sean Dowley. He will stay on as a non-executive chairman for a transition period before Mr. Dowley also takes on the role. Details of this and more in our international business roundup.
British Airways has been embroiled in a bitter dispute with unions over redundancies and pay cuts. It is cutting 13,000 staff and has been criticized by staff and MPs who claim the airline has been following a fire and rehire policy, which left some employees facing pay cuts of up to 50%. Louis Gallego, Chief Executive Officer of IAG, which owns British Airways, said, "We are navigating the worst crisis faced in our industry, and I'm confident these internal promotions will ensure IAG is well placed to emerge in a strong positions." The shake-up is the first major move by Gallego, who took over as IAG's chief executive last month, replacing long-standing boss Willie Walsh. Elsewhere, US tech company Microsoft has told staff that they will have the option of working from home permanently with manager approval. The move mimics the US tech giants' rivals Facebook and Twitter, which have also said remote work would be a permanent option. It follows a rapid shift away from office working prompted by the coronavirus pandemic. Many companies are reconsidering how much office space they need, expecting a long-term increase in remote staff. Microsoft said some roles will continue to require an in-person presence, such as those needing access to hardware, the firm added. But many staff will also be able to work from home part-time without needing formal approval from their managers. The company says the goal is to evolve the way work is done over time with intention, which is guided by employee input, data, and commitment to support individual work styles and business needs. Betty Kiptum, Channel 1 Business.
Time to play, and we begin with boxing, where the national boxing team, which comprises of 14 players, has resumed group training for the first time after the outbreak of coronavirus. The team is preparing for the Bingwa wa Mabingwa boxing challenge that will be held in Tanzania this December, as well as the second round of Olympic qualifiers that will be held in France early next year.
First Kenyan woman to win a Commonwealth Games medal in boxing, Christine Ongare and Nick Okoth, who both booked slots to feature in next year's Olympics, were among boxers who resumed training in Nairobi. Ongare has said she is glad to have resumed training with her teammates as she sets her eyes on upcoming African Challenge, Bingwa wa Mabingwa, set to be hosted in Tanzania, and the Tokyo Olympics for next year.
Kama ni strength nimekuwa nikiwork. Hii karibu ni wiki ya 3 ya 4 hivi. Na hiyo ndio imekuwa weakness yangu. Although game sasa unajua pia mpaka nifanye sparring, kwa sababu unajua boxing ni sparring. Na ndio vitu bado zijakubaliwa na serikali. But game ikakuja saa hizi mimi niko ready.
So it's practically impossible to keep waiting for say next year to start training for an Olympic qualifier. So we decided we decided to take this as a blessing in disguise and use this time to do some of the things that we don't normally get time to do. That is strength and power training.
Nick Okoth, the team captain, has said the team that will head to France for second round of Olympic qualifiers is eager to show an impressive performance.
Tunajisinaga power. Mimi nishajenaga mimi mwenyewe. Nashindaga tu tuna point, unaona. Kitambo sana nipigaga mtu knockout. Lakini this time, saje pia ni yangu ya mwisho Olympic. Na ndio kuangalia Olympic itatoa matokeo. Ikiendelea bado naendelea juu ile
nilipokosa ticket kwa Africa Championship, hizo qualifiers za Africa, sijakata tamaa. Nimeweka malengo yangu bado hapo kwa sababu niko na nafasi moja ambayo ni ya kufuzu kwa dunia huko Ufaransa. Na imani kwamba nitaenda nyakua tiketi yangu pande hiyo.
Boxing bado ni contact sport, but we urge to CS sisi wote
tutazingatia historia ya corona na tutajua kila mtu amepimwa, tuko sawa, because sport mwaka iendelee. Hakuna venye unaweza fanya sports zingine. Ukiangalia worldwide sport inaendelea. Ni fans ndio wako. Fans ndio waendi kuparticipate.
The team will continue training so long as all government set directives to curb the spread of COVID-19 are adhered to. Frederick Mwoki for Channel 1 Sports.
Now, the Kenya Chess Federation chairman Bernard Wanjala has announced plans of hosting a 2-day championship this December after players missed in action since the outbreak of the coronavirus. Wanjala has urged the government to consider resumption of contact sporting activities as all directives to curb the spread of COVID-19 will be adhered to.
It's unfortunate that chess is among the sports that were not allowed to resume, but we have requested the ministry to share with us the consideration they used to review our position and of course appeal so that at least chess can be allowed to resume and allow us to host one of our biggest events annually, National Chess Championship, which we look forward to hosting in December.
Moving on, the Los Angeles Lakers ended a decade-long wait for a 17th NBA title as they beat the Miami Heat's 106-93 to seal a 4-2 series victory. The finals' most valuable player, LeBron James, posted a triple-double, scoring 28 points, 14 rebounds and 10 assists, with both Anthony Davis and Rajon Rondo adding 19 points. By lifting the trophy, the Los Angeles Lakers tied the Boston Celtics for the most titles by a single franchise, each with 17. The Chicago Bulls and the Golden State Warriors have the next most championship banners, both with 6. Indeed, thank you so much for keeping it Channel 1 and, of course, for watching Channel 1 News Hour. My name is Njue, but before I leave, of course, a lot of you with comments regarding education. Anam, education is compulsory. I support the issue of education and the protocols. Calvin Swahili was watching from Kaimosi, Vihiga County. Keep it Channel 1. Saffron Okech from Kisumu. An interesting one here. Okay. Somebody was watching from Rwanda and another one was watching actually from the United Arab Emirates. Thank you so much. Simon Karuda has been our sign language interpreter for tonight. Until next time, do have yourself a blessed night. But before I leave, I'll leave you in the hands of Irene Mchuma Odim with the latest weather. Good night.
Good evening. I hope you're well today. My name is Irene Mchuma Odim. Mid-October it is, and most parts of the country have been covered with scattered wet conditions. Only counties in the southeastern lowlands and counties in the coastal strip are the ones that are experiencing partly cloudy conditions tonight, and that is how the night will be. The coldest town tonight is Kericho. Temperatures stand at 11 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, there'll be rains in Moyale and Marsabit during the early morning hours, weather patterns that will also prevail in Lodwar, the northeastern parts of the country and the southeastern lowlands. Also, the capital, it will be sunny during the morning hours, weather patterns that will stretch towards the afternoon. But for you, at the coastal strip, expect scattered wet conditions during the early morning, as much as sunny intervals will prevail. At the Lake Basin region, there will be sunny intervals over most parts of the country. Similar patterns will also prevail over the western sector, but these rains will be experienced in Kitale during the early morning hours. In the afternoon, there'll be showers accompanied by thunderstorms in several counties over the western sector and also over the northwestern parts of the country. The northeastern will continue to experience sunny intervals, and for you over the coastal strip, similarly, expect sunny intervals to prevail. In the capital, sunny intervals will prevail during the morning hours, but for you in Meru and Nyeri, expect showers of a few places and especially over high ground areas. Temperatures in the country, this is it. The highest will be experienced in Mandera and Lodwar at 35 degrees Celsius. The capital will experience highs of 27 and lows of 13 degrees Celsius. That is our weather here in the home country. Let's now cross the borders and have a look at the international forecast. Do have a good night and see you tomorrow, God willing.